So I was invited to speak at Paul Palmer University High School on a topic called Life Outside the Classroom, and I thought it was appropriate to share some of the principles with these students that were juniors, seniors, and mainly the students were like 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. But as I was given the message, I said, wow, I need to get this content out to the world. It was just so rewarding seeing these students receive the information, and also the teachers receive the information. The teachers came up to me and said, wow, every single student needs to hear this. And the student said, can I bring this home and share this information with one of the students? Like, can I share this with my dad? One of the students came up to me afterwards with her heart coming out of her eyes, couldn't even get her words out, saying, I just needed to hear that. Thank you so much. So it really inspired me to get this message out and get this information out. The title is, and the topic is, Life Outside the Classroom. And when I grew up in New Jersey, youngest of 8, went to high school there, is all familiar with me. I lived up in New Jersey for about 18 years of my life, and everything was familiar, everything was safe, everything was really simple is a good word to describe it. Very comfortable, another word to describe it. And when I left that, we'll call it a fish tank, when I left that fish tank and moved out to Florida to go to Tampa for University of South Florida, it was like a small little fish living in a fish tank for 18 years and then getting dropped into this big giant ocean. And there's different ways to describe that ocean. You could describe the ocean as filled with possibilities, filled with opportunities, filled with independence, or it could be filled with fear and uncertainty and danger. There's different ways to describe that ocean. Really think about the ocean, because it could create different feelings for us. So what's the truth about the ocean? The truth is whatever we believe it to be. So then what's a belief? A belief is a story that we tell ourselves with absolute certainty that has a meaning behind it as well. So it's a story with absolute certainty of what something means. So essentially the story that we tell ourselves is a belief, and that belief is what we hold to be the truth. So there's two different types of stories that we could tell ourselves. There's a faith-based story and there's a fear-based story. A faith-based story makes us feel good. A fear-based story makes us feel bad. Another way of thinking about this is that a faith-based story takes a little bit of effort, because it takes effort to feel good, and a fear-based story is something that just automatically happens. Essentially, it's a reaction, and that reaction, it puts us in autopilot. So one of the reasons, the main reason why we go on autopilot and why we react is because we're wired that way. The way a computer is wired, that if you take the mouse and drag it over an icon and double-click the icon and something pops up on the screen, it's wired and programmed to make that happen. We are wired and programmed in our brain to just react. And the reason why is because when we were created as a species thousands and thousands of years ago, that was our protection mechanism, was the flight or fight mechanism that was put into our brain to program us to either run or fight. Just like a chameleon changes colors, a lizard will lose its tail, a bird could fly. Our protection mechanism is the amygdala to protect us from any type of danger. Well, because we have been blessed and cursed with this gift of this amygdala, a lot of us don't ever interrupt the pattern or aren't even aware of the pattern of what's happening in our brain behind the scenes. So if we can consistently tell a fear-based story to ourselves, there are some causes, effects, and consequences of this. Same thing with the faith-based. So let's talk about the fear-based stories first. So a fear-based story, the cause, well, because we tell ourselves fear-based stories, the cause of that is we go into reaction mode. Reaction mode and autopilot. Autopilot is things that happen habitually. So if you think about, texting LOL, but you're not laughing out loud. We just habitually just text it all the time. Or the way we wash our hair, the way we wash our body, the way we brush our teeth, or wake up in the morning, or put on our seatbelt, or open up a door. Like the way we do any pattern where we're no longer thinking about it, it's just autopilot. An example I gave the students in class was ever zoning out in class, and you're about to zone out, or you are zoned out, and the teacher calls on you, and you wake up and your heart beats a mile a minute, and it stops all at the same time, and they ask you a question, and students fluffs their way to the right answer. And a lot of the students laughed at this, and I said, the reason why you're able to fluff your way to the answer is because even though you were unconscious in the moment, your brain was still working behind the scenes to still come through with the right answer. So even though we are on autopilot very often, our brain is still working behind the scenes unconsciously. And the goal is to bring the unconscious to the conscious, but if we're not aware of that, then we just go in this autopilot, and there's some serious effects of this. So, such as getting triggered easily. There's a whole list of low energy and doubt and no risks. And I'll go through this list with you, but the first one, as far as getting triggered easily, if let's say you wake up late, you're getting rushed, you stepped in dog poop, you're sitting in traffic, and you're just so bothered for the day, and then someone asks you a question, or says something that was slightly invasive, and it triggers you where you react in a way that you normally wouldn't, but because you were in this emotional state, you lash out at them. Well, it really had nothing to do with them or their question or their comment. It just had more so had to do with your emotional state. On the flip side of that, imagine a significant other or your mom had stuck in traffic, bad day at work, boss yelled at her, stuck in traffic again, low energy, comes home, and then you say, hey mom, I got a bad grade on the test today, or something, I got a traffic ticket or something like that, whatever it might be. And she flips out. Now, her emotional trigger necessarily wasn't about you, it was about her day, but oftentimes we take it personally. When we are telling ourselves a fear-based story, we take it personally ourselves, and we dish it out, and we expect people not to take it personally. It's easy for us to get triggered when we are telling a fear-based story unconsciously or consciously. Low energy, the consequence here or the effect here is like hitting the alarm 17 times to start the day. Or like when I showed up to speak to these kids, I was ready, I was feeling good. First period, they were like zombies. They were there but didn't know why they were there. And oftentimes people might show up to their work or show up to their business or show up to school, show up in life and just have such low energy and not necessarily know why they're doing what they're doing, and they're just on autopilot. Autopilot also creates doubt and discouragement for ourselves where we feel incapable of certain activities or certain outcomes that we might have in our life. Low energy comes from another effect is not taking any risks, knowing that we're capable of something but not really willing to take the risk because we're scared of all the consequences or the outcomes that might come from that. Another one is low commitment, and that one, in my opinion, is really it's really a challenge because if someone has low commitment, think about it in these terms. If a student's in class and they have low commitment, they might drop out of school. If they have low commitment, they might quit the team. They might quit the job. They might quit the relationship. They might quit eating healthy. And those low commitments really create this downward cycle. I would say the most detrimental of all of these effects is judgment. Judgment is the base level of violence. So if someone has self-judgment or judgment against other people, realistically, they could position themselves for some really serious harm of other people or also for themselves. That's why the suicide rate for teenagers is at the all-time high. And I empathize with a lot of these students specifically because social media nowadays makes everything public. I mean, if you have a bad hair day, you have something embarrassing happen, everyone knows about it. Me, when I was going into high school, I didn't have to worry about that as much. I mean, MySpace was on the up and up senior year. Facebook came out freshman year of high school. But like these kids nowadays, everything gets blasted on social media. Going into high school, I was about 60 pounds overweight. I had pimples, freckles, glasses, braces. I mean, I was super awkward. And for me, I would self-loathe. I would lock myself in my room and hide some Twinkies in there and just eat to create comfort. And in this low energy, this low commitment, this self-judgment, this fear-based story that we tell ourselves creates addictions to try to escape from the reality of this protection because it doesn't feel good. And those addictions can have some serious consequences. And those consequences include a life filled with regret. I mean, we hear it all the time where someone says, oh, if I could go back in time to when I was blank age, I would do blank differently. And if you look at the statistics are alarming here in America specifically. You think about 50% of marriages are projected to end in a divorce. Over 50% of the population are addicted to prescription drugs. That's why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And then you have over 50% of the population has some sort of psychological disorder or mental disorder, or some sort of addiction. You have over 80% are considered overweight or obese. Over 80% are considered in debt, with approximately $100,000 in debt as an average. So realistically, the consequences here are someone is going to be fat, sick, broken, alone if they allow these fear-based stories to control their beliefs, which controls their truth on how they view their world. See, in our society, we are groomed and designed to focus on outcomes and results. Like, we're fed this all over the place of like, get rich quick and lose weight fast and take this pill, or go to Match.com, you'll find the love of your life real fast. Like, everything is about outcomes. Even college, we try to tell these students all the time, like, go to college. I have my engineering degree, so I'm not anti-college by any means. But if we think that college is the ultimate outcome for these students, this is what I told them. So if we focus on the outcome, go to college, get a degree, well, then therefore the belief is that I'll be successful in life, which creates a feeling of significance and an opportunity to be worthy of success, which creates actions that are aligned with that, which is studying really hard and getting good grades, which creates more outcomes, which creates another story of belief, and it's a cycle, which is really great. The outcome, I want to lose weight. So by me losing weight, I'm going to believe that I'm sexy, which makes me feel really confident. So I take actions to continue going to the gym, which gets me better outcomes that make me lose weight, which makes me feel more sexy. And it's this cycle, which is great. But the challenge with outcomes and results, they're not always there. Sometimes we get bad grades. Sometimes we do mess up in our diet routine. Sometimes we do not get the results that we're after. We might get a bad paycheck. We might have circumstances come our way. And if we don't get the outcomes, then the belief is, and the story we start telling ourselves, are these fear-based ones of, oh my gosh, I want my mom's love, or I want my significant other's love. That's the result. But then she doesn't hug me that day, or she doesn't tell me I love you that day, or she yells at me that day, or she's mad at me. The belief is, oh no, she doesn't love me anymore. The feeling I get is inadequacy, angst, worry, depression. And then the action I take is I self-loathe, I isolate, which creates more outcomes where she still doesn't love me because now I'm not acting in my true self, which creates another belief story, and it's a downward cycle. So anytime we're chasing outcomes, we're going to trigger these fear-based stories, which create serious consequences. The other type of story that we can tell ourselves, though, is a faith-based story. Now, this takes effort, and that's why a lot of people don't do it, because it takes a level of consciousness and a level of intentionality. And the faith-based story, the effects of this, obviously they produce good feelings. If you think about a way to create a faith-based story, conquering a fear. I don't know if you've ever got on a roller coaster when you were scared to get on it, but afterwards you're like, that wasn't so bad, that was really good. Or applying for a job you didn't think you'd get, or applying for a college you didn't think you'd get into, or asking the person out on a date that you didn't think would say yes. Anytime we conquer any of those fears, it feels good. Even if we don't get the outcome, we still conquer the fear. We gave the effort to conquer the fear. Overcoming any type of challenge is another way. Even the small challenges, like you don't feel like going to the gym. An epiphany. We never feel like going to the gym. We come up with all these reasons on why we shouldn't go to the gym. Those reasons might include, I'm going to be sore, I don't have enough time, I don't have the right clothing, I look fat in my clothes, people are going to judge me, whatever it might be. But then we still go anyway. And when we conquer those fears and we conquer that and we end up going to the gym anyway, once we're done with that workout, whether it's immediately or 1 or 2 or 3 hours later, we always feel good. 10 out of 10 times we feel good because we overcame that challenge of the mind. Anytime we overcome challenges. I overcame a challenge recently. I was in San Francisco in September, and I've been doing this cold plunge, cold shower challenge for about a year now. And I was in San Francisco. I didn't realize how cold it was in September. So the wind was blowing. It was super cold. And I'd never been in San Francisco Bay. So I was like, I'm going to jump in the bay. So I did something I shouldn't have done, which was Google search the temperature of the water. So the coldest water I ever jumped into was probably my mother-in-law's pool during Christmas time. It said it was 64 degrees. And 64 degrees was so cold that when I jumped into the pool, like I felt like my nipples burned off. That's how cold the water was. So I Google search, and it said the San Francisco Bay was in the 50s, sub 50s or 50 degrees. It says hypothermia risk, make sure you wear wetsuits, stuff like that. Which of course triggered a lot of fears of, oh no, maybe I'll get sick, or maybe this is going to, create a detriment to my weekend of this immersion getaway that I'm supposed to be attending. And then there's all these other stories of why I shouldn't do it, because I don't have a towel. It's a pretty valid reason. I don't have a swimsuit, which is another pretty valid reason. It's really cold outside. It's a half a mile walk up the road with with being wet. All these stories come in the way, and then I interrupted my pattern, overcame the challenge of the mind, stripped down to my underwear, and jumped and ran into this water. And it was really freaking cold. And it was probably about 6:30 in the morning. So if anyone was watching me, they would think I'm a freaking maniac. But not many people were around, if any. And I celebrated overcoming that little challenge like I just won the freaking lottery. I mean, if anyone was watching, I yelled, I cheered. I was so happy and so proud of myself for having the courage to overcome that fear and overcome that mental challenge I had for myself. So overcoming any of those little challenges or big challenges in our lives, they create faith-based stories. Other effects that we can have are our gratitude, being intentional with our gratitude. I put myself in a position to intentionally feel grateful, and I revisit moments in my life, whether it be my wedding day with my wife, of us holding hands and making direct eye contact, or the first time I walked across burning hot coals at a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within event when I was so scared, but overcoming that challenge and feeling so much gratitude for the courage I had, or taking my dad to Switzerland, being on the top of the mountain with my dad and saying, man, we made it. Like, we talked about this my whole life and we did it. We're here. And the honor and the gratitude of taking him on that trip, or hitting the game-winning shot in the 8th grade basketball team. Like, all these small little moments, or memories with my mom before she got sick. Like, all these different really special moments, and intentionally revisiting this gratitude. And I can't teach gratitude, but I could describe the feeling. I get that feeling daily when I get home and I hug my wife and I align my heart with hers, and we align our breathing, and I hold her, and sometimes she'll try to let go, and I'm like, no, I'm not there yet. And I hold her, align our breathing until I feel those little tinglies, those little butterflies. And that's gratitude. Those little tinglies, those little butterflies. And it's such a great feeling, but it takes effort to get there. It takes effort to get there. I think about reading and getting outside perspective. See, watching a movie is great because we could still get these get great perspective, but the director has created the tempo of the movie. But when you read, you're the director, so you can absorb the content at your own pace. Especially reading biographies and reading other people's stories, because you could adopt any of their love, compassion, passion, their courage, anything that the author, or anything that the author's trying to create in the story, you could adopt in that moment by reading. And I didn't realize that reading for me was a chore. In fact, in middle school, I failed reading. I got a 50 because I tried to spark note everything. I didn't want to read the books because I felt like it was a waste of my time. So when I changed the way I viewed reading, I started reading a lot more. And now I'll digest 12 to 25 books a year, just because I see the power in it to be able to learn, but also to be able to teach. Another one is coaching, intentional question asking. See, you could ask yourself a question of, what can I be grateful for right now? And you'll come up with a list of answers. You could also ask yourself, what do I hate about myself right now? You could come up with another list of questions and answers. And the power of those questions can lead us to faith-based stories. Also, stillness. I've recently started the practice of meditation and stillness. And at first, when I heard meditation, I thought it was like shave my head, go to Tibet, wear a robe, try to levitate and just om. Like, that's what I thought about, like, meditation. But realistically, I've realized that meditation is all stillness. That's all it is, the stillness of the mind. Studies show that we have 50,000 thoughts a day. And if our natural reaction is to have fear-based thoughts, well, that means most of our thoughts don't serve us. Because what happens is those thoughts come in, they hit the amygdala, and it comes and gets processed in our brain and goes and stays there and creates an emotion. So most of the time, these thoughts don't serve us. So when I do my meditation practice, sometimes I'm sitting there in my meditation practice and I'm like, this is such a waste of time. I only do about 10 minutes a day. Oh my God, this is such a waste of time. And I get that thought come in and I just watch it go by. Another thought will come in. Like yesterday, for example, when I was teaching at the school. Why am I going to go take this time? I've been traveling. These kids, some of them aren't even going to understand what I'm talking about. I let that thought go by. Oh, I have such a long to-do list, and oh my gosh, I don't know if this is going to be worth my time. Like, I have to get stuff done, and I let that thought go by. And then I'll give myself permission to allow positive thoughts come in. Like, what if my message instills some sort of change or courage in one of these young kids that maybe changes the whole direction of their life? Yeah, I'll keep that thought. I'll hold on to that. What, by speaking to some of these kids, what if any of them get inspired to teach these principles to their parents, which can create a ripple that changes the whole direction of other people's lives? Yeah, I'll hold on to that thought too. Like, we have the chance of choosing our thoughts when we're still. So the practice of meditation and stillness is really powerful. COI is circle of influence. The people that we're sitting around and associating with, most of the time they're toxic. Our environment, the people around us are always toxic. It's just going to happen. We can't change people, but we can decide on what's going to influence us. At the UPW event, there was 12,000 people this last weekend at Tony Robbins in Newark, and Pitbull was one of the guests, and he did this awesome performance. It was really cool, and he took about 20 minutes to give a speech. And what I received from his speech was that when he was young, going to high school in Miami, and most of the people he was around were doing cocaine and drugs and have all these addictions, and he said, I would observe it, but I never participated. So what I received with that was he was observing what was happening around him, but it didn't allow him to influence his own path, and that's why he's Pitbull, and that's why we know who he is. The people that influenced him, he said, was his mom, his grandma, and his aunt. Those three people were able to influence him versus the toxic environment that he was around. So if you have a friend around you, a friend, quote unquote, that you say, I'm going to take this risk, I'm going to start this business. And they say, oh, I wouldn't do that. You're probably not going to be able to do it. They're projecting their own insecurity onto you. I would drop that influence from that friend. I would release them from your life. If you have a friend that says, I would do it, go for it. And even if you fail, who cares? At least you know you tried. You'll never know unless you give it a shot. I would keep that friend around as much as possible. So the influence that you get from those around you. And the last one is give. When we give, we feel really, really good. If you ever hold the door for a stranger and they say thank you, you're like, oh, that felt really good, even though I did a good deed for someone else. So that was one of the motivations of feeding a lot of people. We've now provided about 70,000 meals through PB&J for Tampa Bay, and every time we give the sandwiches, it feels good. We make the sandwiches, we provide the meals, and we hand them out to those in the area. I mean, it just feels good to give. Anytime we can give, it feels good, whether it's giving a compliment or giving an act of service or giving words of affirmation to other people, whatever it might be, it feels good to give. So all of these create these faith-based stories, and even though it takes effort, the cause of these faith-based stories, it takes effort, the effect, it feel good. We have a high level of self-confidence. That's the effect overall. But the consequences, I'll tell you right now, is a fulfillment, a happy life, joy, abundance. We hear the saying, the rich get richer. The fit get fitter, the wealthier get wealthier. And it's really because instead of chasing outcomes and results, we're starting the cycle with beliefs and stories. Because if we like where we are right now, and we take a risk, either we achieve an outcome or we stay right where we are. And if we're good with where we are and we're happy with where we are, we're willing to take the risk, because the worst thing that happens if I try and I fail, I'm right where I am. And that's faith-based story. If we're living in fear-based story, autopilot, reaction mode, and we take a risk, we think if I try and I fail, I'm where I am, and I fail, I regress, I get worse, I get embarrassed, I get judged. So therefore, we don't take the risk because we think we're going to go backwards because we're chasing an outcome that we didn't receive. Whereas when we're sharing we're focusing on the faith-based stories, we're willing to take those risks. We're willing to say, I love you. We're willing to try. And that's the beautiful part. When we control the belief, we create certain feelings automatically. And those feelings of gratitude and abundance and joy and confidence and fulfillment, we take actions. And even though sometimes we get the outcome, sometimes we don't, we still have this certain belief that we're anchored to. And we're more likely to get more outcomes by trying than not trying. So if we can live with these faith-based stories, and we hold those as our beliefs to be the truth, well, those consequences are very exciting. So the action steps that I really have is do your best to unattach from the outcomes and just focus on the process. So someone once said, focus on the process, not the prize. Forget about the prize. Just go for it and just have fun and enjoy the process. The secret to life is creating the feelings without the prize. And when you could do that through faith-based stories, you could feel the abundance. You could feel like a billionaire without having $1 billion. Because if you have $1 billion, but you still feel anxious, worried, depressed, defeated, burned out, your life isn't a billionaire. Your life is depressed, defeated, burnt out, defeated, overwhelmed. So be unattached to the prize and focus on the process. Also, another action step would be to create faith-based stories, conquer fears, overcome challenges. Work out, tell people I love you, give compliments, hold doors for strangers, take cold showers, do things that are tough, and create those faith-based stories for yourself. And I would also encourage you to document your feelings. So that way you could journal and get a snapshot of your emotions. So that way you could be aware of where you're at. And say you're in a moment of rage and you're just so angry. You got triggered. You know you got triggered and you're aware of the trigger. You write down, how do I feel? I feel pissed off. I feel angry. I feel bad. Then you ask the next question. Why do I feel this way? I feel this way because so-and-so cut me off in traffic. So-and-so cursed me off. So-and-so is mad at me. I disappointed so-and-so. Okay, how do I want to feel? Well, I want to feel happy. I want to feel joy. I want to feel confident. I want to feel enriched. Well, what are some actions I can take to feel this way? And then boom, you're probably going to come up with some of these actions here. So by consciously bringing those emotions to the logical part of our brain and bringing that awareness that I'm telling a fear-based story, I'm in reaction mode, boom, let me interrupt the pattern, create a faith-based story by asking questions and documenting it, you're able to control your life and control your outcomes, and you have the dignity of choice that we're also blessed with. So yes, we are blessed and cursed with the protection reaction mode, but we're also blessed and cursed with the dignity of choice. And we could use those choices to help us create the outcomes that we want in our life by controlling the beliefs first. So the title of this message, again, is Life Outside the Classroom. And the classroom could be considered a safe space, whether it be a fish tank or a school or your job or whatever it is. But realistically, if you feel safe, you're probably an autopilot. It's time to get outside of that fish tank and into the ocean of possibility and really live your best life. So stay tuned for more content.